The Miles Edgeworth manga series was written to coincide with the release of the first Miles Edgeworth game. It was done by the same author-artist team that previously worked on the Phoenix Wright manga. It doesn't appear they got to play the game before making the manga. Kay Faraday is not in any of the stories. It feels like one of those classic murder mystery series where a standoffish detective with a dumb sidekick keeps stumbling upon crime scenes where the killer used 2 to 4 tricks to hide the truth. These could be released as noir novels. I would not mind that. I also wouldn't have minded if these cases were part of the game, like they had been released as DLC cases or something. Like if they made a third game which was just these cases and not like huge drama about Edgeworth being fired or saving the world, I'd be fine with that. My average score for the series is a 7 out of 10. The rest of this video is my reviews for those 4 books. There's only 4 of them, so it's not that long. In the first case of this book, Edgeworth attends a masquerade party. A woman in an extremely revealing devil outfit tries to seduce him. Edgeworth isn't interested because her wedding ring tan shows that she's married. Edgeworth is more concerned with a shy woman in a witch costume. Edgeworth keeps trying to chat with her, while the first woman keeps interrupting and showing off her boobs. Consider me very surprised that this is the story they started the manga series with. It's like the author played the Edgeworth game and said, "Hey, you know what this game needs? A sexy love triangle."
Argo Funk Book Review, Argo Funk Book Review.
Someone is murdered in the woman's bathroom nearby. Blood is everywhere. The killer must have blood all over their clothes. There's also a locked stall. Inside is a drunk person wearing nothing but a pair of underwear. Detective Gumshoe is embarrassed by this sight. When Edgeworth is told about the murder, he immediately identifies the witch as the killer. He says she stole the witch costume from the drunk person to cover up her blood-stained clothes. In real life, I'm sure the police would politely ask the woman to remove her cloak so they could see if the turtleneck she's wearing underneath is covered in blood. That is the simple, easy way to resolve this case. But of course Edgeworth won't take the easy way out when he can show off his detective skills. Edgeworth knows the witch outfit is not the woman's costume, since her shoes don't match. Also, she's left-handed, but she's wearing her pin on the left shoulder. This could be a cultural thing. I was taught you always pin name tags on your right shoulder because that's the arm you use to shake hands. Then again, this is not a name tag, so maybe the rules are different. The witch claims that she merely borrowed the costume from the drunk woman. She didn't steal the costume. Edgeworth reveals the final clue. The drunk person in the woman's restroom is a man. He just happened to be wearing a gender-specific outfit in the wrong bathroom. He did that because he was drunk, and also the story needed a plot twist. Now I'm questioning the earlier moment where Gumshoe was embarrassed because he saw a mostly nude woman. That must have happened in order to deceive the readers. Edgeworth's admirer is even more attracted to him now that he solved the murder. She's unhappy to learn that Edgeworth is not wearing a costume for the masquerade ball. Those are his normal clothes. The rest of the book is a 3-chapter case called Turnabout Last Number. Gumshoe forces Edgeworth to come with him to a rock concert. Edgeworth is angry the whole time. The guitarist interrupts the last song with a solo. Clearly there must be murder plans afoot, because guitarists never take solos. Everyone yells at the guitarist during the 10-minute break before their encore. The lead singer usually appears on a stage lift. When the stage lift comes up, his dead body is on it. Somebody killed him during the break. Gumshoe and Edgeworth take control of the situation. The area under the stage is blocked by a lot of boxes. Inside is the murder weapon, a bowling ball. The drummer looks guilty. Since he owns the murder weapon, no one can confirm his alibi, and he laughs with glee over the victim's death. There are 20 people on staff, but the book can't possibly have enough space to focus on all of them. We only meet Clemmy, nicknamed Clumsy. He messed up the smoke during the show, and he accidentally ordered 200 food boxes instead of 20. Those were the boxes blocking the understage area. Well, if Clumsy and his boxes blocked the only door the whole time, how did the culprit get in and out of the crime scene? Edgeworth learns one of the onstage amps is empty, and the victim's hat was covered with glow-in-the-dark paint. The vital clue in the mystery is the control panel. The marks on the outside of the panel indicate that the writing was moved. The panel is supposed to look like this, with all the marks lined up. As you can see, S is number 3. The culprit purposely moved the panel to this incorrect position, where S is number 4. I'm sorry, but that is not a picture of S at number 4. That is still S at number 3. It's a bummer that the picture doesn't match the mystery solution. Maybe that was a mistake made when they translated the book from Japanese to English. Since the label is wrong, Clumsy accidentally pressed the stage lift button, not the smoke machine button. The door to the stage lift opened, and the victim fell backwards to the downstairs area. The killer then took a bowling ball, which was hidden inside the empty amp. He dropped it on the victim's head, using the victim's glow-in-the-dark paint as a target. The culprit is the guitarist, who was closest to the amp. He played his loud solo to cover up the sound of the stage lift. His guilt is proven beyond a shadow of a doubt when one of his fingerprints is found on the control label. The end. Post-book follow-up. I like the first case, but it's a little deceptive to portray Edgeworth as a genius who solves murder mysteries without visiting crime scenes or going over evidence. That's just a one-time thing. For the rest of the series, he'll search every crime scene in detail. It'd be weird if there weren't any investigations in the Investigations series, right? Plus, if he didn't investigate, the books would be too short. The second case was fine, except for the artwork messing up on the vital clue. I did not see anybody else complain about it, so maybe that was just my copy that had the mistake. Edgeworth is fairly in character in this book. I think he uses some common slang terms that he'd avoid in the games. He comes across as a touch meaner. Detective Gumshoe is far less in character. Normally, he's your pal. He's a well-meaning cop who occasionally screws up, but who always comes through when it matters. Here, he's just an idiot who can't do anything right. He constantly annoys Edgeworth. Maybe that's why Edgeworth seems like more of a meanie. He's criticizing Gumshoe more often. Overall, I'd say this series is in line both with the video game and with the Phoenix Wright manga series. I actually prefer this manga series over Phoenix's. Since there's no courtroom stuff, there's more focus on detective murder mystery stuff. Also, every Edgeworth book has 2 full cases per book. Most of Phoenix's books had 1.5 cases per book. I give Miles Edgeworth Ace Attorney Investigations Volume 1 an 8 out of 10. Case 3 of the Miles Edgeworth manga series is called The Turnabout Bullet. Could you imagine what a case would be like with a bullet that physically turns about? A boomerang bullet? Officer Tompkins has a car chase with a jewel thief. The suspect grabs a hostage and enters a building with large bags of salt. A shootout occurs. A big part of the mystery is figuring out what happened when. The thief shot twice. One was a wild shot that hit a salt bag, while the other shot hit the officer in the side. The officer shot once, hitting the thief in the forehead. One of the shots was low to the ground, and it grazed a salt bag. Edgeworth arrives with his ruffly cravat. He goes over the case with Gumshoe and talks to the survivors. The hostage cries a lot. The officer can't remember what happened, but he knows he would never shoot someone. Edgeworth finds a series of clues during his investigation. One of them is that the driver's seat of the car was moved all the way up. I remember this from Encyclopedia Brown, Book 10, Case 10. It means the driver was the short hostage, not the tall victim. Since she gave the thief a ride, Edgeworth concludes she's not a hostage, she is his getaway driver, who only pretended to be a hostage. Edgeworth proves this by pointing out her coffee was in the driver's side of the car. Another clue is that the victim's gun holster has no blood on it, even though his hand is covered in blood. Clearly, it's not the case that he was shot, covered with blood, then pulled out his gun from the holster. The last clue is that one of the salt bags is actually a sugar bag. Since the salt is on top and the sugar is on bottom, that means the sugar bag was hit first. If it had been the last shot fired, as the hostage claims, then it would have landed on top of the salt. Edgeworth explains everything calmly, while Gumshoe and the hostage have large reactions to every minor point. Edgeworth claims the hostage shot the officer with the first shot. The officer was knocked unconscious. The hostage stole his gun and shot the thief with the shot that pierced the sugar bag. The third shot is the wild one that hit the salt bag. I should probably note that gunshot residue is part of the case. To fake the residue, she put the gun in someone else's hand before she fired shots 2 and 3. I find it amazing she made a perfect shot while crouched on the ground holding someone else's hand. Edgeworth wraps up his explanation by saying the hostage hid the stolen jewels and her incriminating gloves inside Gumshoe's police car. Case 4 is the Turnabout Museum. Detective Gumshoe has been asked to help with security at a museum. The museum is on a remote island which can only be accessed by a rickety bridge that will fall at any second. That seems like a terrible location for a museum. I bet nobody ever comes here. A famous painting named Officers is being displayed for the first time in 20 years. Museum owner Randolph Miller says he got a threat from a group called the Handsome Gentlemen Thieves. These incredibly handsome and kind men steal things from all over the world. Although they're on the cover, they're not in the actual story. That's a huge letdown. The end reveals the culprit made up the handsome thieves rumor as a red herring to fool the police. Too bad Edgeworth is smarter than the police. The various suspects, the other characters at the museum, include Monet, Miller's reasonably attractive niece, Max the security guard, who gives a powerful thumbs up, Bester, a comedy relief detective who brags he's the best in the world while jumping to silly conclusions. After a brief power outage, everybody goes to a different spot for a stakeout. After an hour, the power goes out again. The security guard calls Gumshoe, but he doesn't say anything. Miller says he'll check the painting while Gumshoe circles around the outside of the museum. This only takes a minute, but forcing Gumshoe to go all the way around the island sure makes it seem like he's getting rid of Gumshoe on purpose. When Gumshoe returns, the exhibit room is locked. Gumshoe breaks open the door. Max is dead, lying next to an empty painting frame. Bester thinks he caught the handsome thieves, but he's wrong. It's Edgeworth. He's not a thief, but he is handsome. Edgeworth asks, "What the hell is going on?" Edgeworth swearing? The question is how the culprit managed to do so many things in a short period of time, just 1 minute. The other question is how the culprit escaped through a locked door, but this is never taken too seriously. I get the sense that in the game, this point would have been debated and stretched out a lot more. It's discovered the culprit used a timer to cause the blackouts. A large bloody cloth is found. Edgeworth solves the case when he learns the victim called Gumshoe without saying anything. Edgeworth's read enough mysteries to know that call was clearly a fake. The culprit wanted to mislead people about the real time of death. The real death happened much earlier, shortly after the first blackout. This helps explain how the culprit managed to do so much in a short time. They did everything across 2 blackouts instead of doing all of it during the 1 blackout. Edgeworth double-checks the security footage of the guard. After the first blackout, he no longer has a shadow and his watch doesn't droop. Conclusion, he is not standing against the wall. He is lying on the floor, dead. Specifically, he's lying on the sheet. It's a very, very long sheet that goes underneath the door. That way, the culprit was able to move the corpse from outside the room by yanking the sheet through the bottom of the door. Edgeworth accuses Miller, who was alone at the crime scene when Gumshoe ran around the building. I'm a little surprised nobody realized that sooner. In a further twist, Edgeworth correctly guesses that Miller sold the real painting years ago. The one he put on display is a fake. It's not even a forgery, it's a poster of the real painting. Miller committed murder to keep this secret. In another twist at the end, it's revealed that Edgeworth's friend, who I forgot to mention earlier, was really one of the handsome gentlemen in disguise. He was amused by the whole case. The end. Post-book follow-up. I'm not sure which case was better. The second case had more suspects, which is good. The first case felt more like something you'd see in the game, with the way the characters go through the order of the shots multiple times, adjusting for new evidence each time. The book has a lot of Detective Gumshoe in it, especially since Edgeworth doesn't arrive until halfway through the second case. The book might have worked better with Kay Faraday as Edgeworth's partner, since thievery is her thing and they're both thievery cases. Neither case is exactly like the game. If they were to adapt one of the cases, they would make some changes. The characters would probably be more fleshed out instead of being limited to one personality trait. That goes double for Edgeworth and Gumshoe. I give Miles Edgeworth Ace Attorney Investigations 2 a 7 out of 10. I feel bad for the translator of this manga because it's basically impossible to solve the first case if you're not familiar with Japanese New Year's traditions. For example, one of the big clues is that the victim's hair was messed up. Edgeworth correctly deduces he was tricked into playing Fukuwarai, so the culprit could sneak up on him. If you've never heard of Fukuwarai before, then you've got no chance of solving the mystery. I'm guessing Fukuwarai is not that well known in English-speaking countries, as there is no English equivalent word for it.
Argo Funk Book Review, Argo Funk Book Review.
Case 5 is the Turnabout New Year. On January 4th, Gumshoe brings Edgeworth a Sugoroku set and a Kagami Mochi rice cake to celebrate the new year. They're interrupted by the death of Brody Toynbee. It looks like Toynbee committed harakiri on New Year's Day. We know the date because he has New Year's cards on his desk. In Japan, New Year's cards are never delivered before New Year's Day. It turns out the cards are a clever culprit trick. The culprit stole the cards from the company's mailroom ahead of time. He put them at the crime scene to make it look like the murder happened after the New Year. Additionally, there's an overly festive card from America. It's actually an American Christmas card, which the culprit cropped to make it look like a Japanese New Year card instead. You can tell because the card is red, green, and gold. This book is in black and white. How are we supposed to know what colors the card has? There's a spooky card with a murder curse written on it, as well as a paper that reads Shimokawa. There's a Shinto altar, a cabinet with toys, and a desk that was moved to the window. Ima Sky appears to check out the toy cabinet. The badminton paddles have no fingerprints, and there are traces of blood on, whatever you call the thing that readers are supposed to recognize as a Fukuwarai. The last clue is marks on the collar of the victim's dog. Since Ima lives in America most of the time, she recognizes them as American tally marks. There are 9 marks because the dog is 9 years old. I didn't know marking a dog's age on the collar is a common thing to do. Edgeworth realizes the paper does not read Shimokawa. The 3 lines are American tally marks. This, combined with the moved desk and cleaned paddles, lead Edgeworth to conclude the victim played badminton with the killer. As readers surely know, badminton games are played to 21 points, not 3. The game must have been cut off early because they lost the shuttlecock. The only place it could be is the Shinto shrine. Edgeworth retrieves the incriminating shuttlecock using a stepladder. I believe that is a ladder, not a stepladder, Mr. Edgeworth. Case 6 is the Turnabout Silver Screen. Tonight's the premiere of a detective movie. Deputy Chief Chase Clink consulted on the movie. He's so smart, he normally finishes his cases without having to visit the crime scene. Doesn't Edgeworth do the same thing in the main Phoenix Wright series? Emmy St. Cloud, the female star of the movie, wants a bodyguard to protect her from a stalker. Chief Clink purposely gives the job to his most incompetent officer, Detective Gumshoe. Poor Gumshoe has no idea his boss hates him. He's super excited he gets to protect his celebrity crush. Turns out she's not a great person. Emmy fights with her co-star and fiancé, Sean. He has a pet chihuahua with expensive tastes. Emmy fights with her manager, who is too nondescript to be guilty. Todd, the paparazzi photographer, ruins the bottom of his shoe. He is forced to throw it away. The next chapter starts by reintroducing all the characters and scenarios. Only this case has about 10 characters, so the recap takes a while. Almost all the characters decide to stay the night at the hotel. Gumshoe finds a stalker in the wardrobe room, only it's not the stalker Gumshoe was hired to find. We never do learn about the stalker Gumshoe was hired to find. I think the stalker thing was just an excuse to bring Gumshoe into the story. Late that night, someone drugs Gumshoe's coffee and kills Emmy. Gumshoe is heartbroken to learn he failed his job so badly. Emmy was bludgeoned to death with a prop gun. The crime scene has a spilled bottle of nail polish remover, along with cakes. There's video footage of a cloaked man entering the room. Edgeworth is suspicious of the fact that the man leaves the crime scene with a suitcase. Milt the stalker confesses he locked himself inside the wardrobe room so he could be with Emmy's clothes. The culprit tried to get inside this room, but since it was locked, the culprit was forced to leave the cloak and empty suitcase outside the door. We get several shoe clues. A lot of shoe polish went missing, as did a pair of 10-centimeter elevator shoes. The photographer's ruined shoe is found in the trash by itself. Edgeworth solves the case. He says the culprit tried to frame Sean in 2 ways. First, the culprit set out Sean's cakes at the crime scene, not realizing they were dog food cakes. Second, the culprit disguised the elevator shoes with shoe polish, then wore them to the crime scene. That way the culprit would be the same height as Sean. Edgeworth figures the nail polish fell on the culprit's shoes, which removed the shoe polish. That's why the culprit stole an empty suitcase from the crime scene. He wanted something to block his shoes from the view of the video camera. Since the wardrobe room was locked, the killer was forced to steal a replacement shoe from the trash can. That's why the trash has only 1 shoe instead of 2. The killer is Clink, who has an angry breakdown. He claims he doesn't have a motive. Edgeworth says Clink killed Emmy because he wanted to stop the movie from being released. Why? A building in the background gives an alibi to a criminal that Clink arrested. In a twist, it's revealed Clink was mistaken about the alibi. The movie does not overturn the criminal conviction. Because the footage was edited, the movie people removed the top floor of the building in post-production. Also, it's kind of silly for Clink to assume that just because he saw a date in a movie, that means the movie must have been filmed on that day. Movies don't work like that. It would be impossible to make Christmas movies if they could only be filmed on Christmas Day. The end. Post-book follow-up. There's a 2-page bonus scene where the artist and his wife interrupt the big revelation of Detective Hammer's first name. Detective Hammer has appeared in every case so far. She's an excitable officer who kind of serves as Gumshoe's sidekick. She doesn't get much character development. She's basically there so Gumshoe can have another person to talk to when Edgeworth isn't around. But hey, she has a name and a face, unlike all the other police officers. Good for her. I wasn't the only reader to notice typographical errors. Here, the word gun is accidentally repeated in 2 different balloons, and here, the word what is accidentally repeated in 2 different panels. It looks so weird that Edgeworth says, "What?" in the middle of his sentence. The second case was pretty good, and I wouldn't mind if it had been in the game. It is a little easy to guess that the chief of police is secretly the culprit, like in Case 5 of the first Phoenix Wright game. I did not like the first case, but it seems unfair to judge it too harshly. Maybe they should have included a page explaining Japanese New Year's traditions as an introduction. They explain a little bit in the translation notes at the end, but those could have been greatly expanded. I give Miles Edgeworth Ace Attorney Investigations 3 a 5 out of 10. This is the fourth and final Miles Edgeworth manga. Unlike the other volumes, all of the text is capitalized. I have no idea why they switched to all caps at the end. It looks perfectly fine, although when I first saw it, I got the impression that the speech bubbles had less text overall.
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
Case 7 is Turnabout, The Secret of the Ogres. It sounds like it was named The Secret of the Ogres to begin with, then someone reminded the translator the word turnabout has to be in there somewhere. Speaking of the translation, this case features Russi Taylor, who was in 2 of the Phoenix Wright mangas. Edgeworth knows her, even though he wasn't in those mangas. I guess Franziska von Karma told him about those cases. For some reason, this translation uses the name Candy Holly instead of Russi Taylor. Continuity! Candy is a big fan of ogres. There are comedy moments where Candy is super excited to see ogres. Gumshoe's so scared of ogres, he almost vacates his bowels, as Edgeworth puts it. There's also a comedy relief exorcist who screams a lot and does weird rituals. The story is that Detective Gumshoe's car breaks down in the middle of the woods. He and Edgeworth are forced to stay at the nearby Ogre's Axe Hotel. The hotel is fully booked, but Edgeworth turns on the charm for the receptionist. He's so handsome. She can't help but do whatever he wants. You know, if Edgeworth used his handsomeness powers in the games, they would be a lot shorter. Edgeworth and Gumshoe are taken to a separate building called the Annex, which can only be accessed through the 3rd floor. This building is in bad shape. Floors 1, 4, and 7 were destroyed by fires, and they removed the building's exterior stairs. The only way to get around is by using the terribly old elevator. Our victim is hotel owner Tony Granier, who wants to tear down the entire building. The suspects include security guard Carl Powers, manager Sergio Youngport, and the beautiful Ava Silent. Ava is here because her husband disappeared last week. The phone company says his cell phone is somewhere in this building. Ava and Granier go to the 4th floor, where her husband stayed. They can't find his phone. Both Granier and Gumshoe peek through the boarded-up window. They see an ogre floating in the darkness. Obviously, the mystery doesn't work if our detective hero isn't there. Why does Edgeworth tag along in this particular case? It's because Candy warns Granier is a huge pervert who does bad things to women if he's not supervised. It's nice to see an Ace Attorney case that doesn't treat sexual harassment as a laughing matter. Later that night, Granier falls to his death from the 7th story exit. Nobody knows how he got from the 1st floor to the 7th floor without them hearing the elevator. Speaking of, Gumshoe swears about how slow the elevator is. Gumshoe, language! As revealed, Ava and her husband are career extortionists. Edgeworth solves the case when he sees Ava can't reach the button for floor 7. He says, "An ogre committed this murder!" That's not what he means, but it makes for a great cliffhanger. Edgeworth explains the culprit switched the elevator buttons, so floors 7, 4, and 1 were all mixed up. Since all those floors were burned by fires, no one could tell them apart. This explains how they saw the ogre floating outside of floor 4. It was really someone standing on the ground of floor 1. This also explains how the victim fell from floor 7. He thought he was going through the floor 1 door. Mr. Youngport is the culprit, as he's the only one who has worked here long enough to know about the elevator buttons. Youngport looks more and more like an ogre as he argues for his innocence. It turns out that Ava's husband set a fire on floor 4 as part of an extortion scheme. Youngport was so mad he killed Ava's husband. Like an Edgar Allan Poe villain, he hid the body behind a wall, then boarded it up so no one would ever find it. When he heard Ava plan to find her husband using a cell phone, Youngport concocted the scheme of switching elevator buttons to trick her into searching the wrong floor. Case 8 is the Turnabout Clinic. Edgeworth and Gumshoe go to Jiffy Clinic, which is run down because all of their money goes to a swindler named Mr. Swindle. He comes by every day to get money and coffee with a disgusting amount of sugar. The people at the clinic include 2 gorgeous nurses, 2 not gorgeous patients, and Dr. Jiffy. Swindle's coffee is poisoned. He dies inside a waiting room. It appears to be suicide as the door was locked and the electric keycard was found inside the room. Edgeworth realizes the culprit used a complex string system running along the ceilings of the building. The keycard was tied to the end of the string. That way the culprit was able to lower the string to lock the door from the outside, then pull the string in to drop the key inside the room. The culprit is Clive Fortuna, who has a broken leg. Clive set up the murder trap, and he purposely twisted his good ankle to give himself a fake alibi. It sounds painful. Edgeworth proves Clive's guilt by revealing Clive used a bandage roll in place of string. There's more than enough evidence on his fake bandages. The end. Post-book follow-up. The translator notes that Edgeworth and Gumshoe both refer to Clive with the honorific Coon, which means, "You are younger than me." That's not true. Clive is 33. Edgeworth is around 27 when Phoenix Wright 3 takes place. So either the author mistakenly thinks Edgeworth is much older, or he's using a less polite honorific because he dislikes Clive for some reason. The elevator mystery was great. It works super well in this format, where we can literally see the different number layouts. I could definitely picture a version of this case without Grainier's murder, where the missing husband is the main mystery, or a version where the second ogre appearance is removed. However, it fits the game to add in complications that force Edgeworth down rabbit holes instead of streamlining the story. The hospital case wasn't as good, perhaps because it was noticeably shorter than usual. The characters were less interesting, and I think the subplot about lacquer plates could have been removed entirely, which is why I didn't mention it. I find it a little hard to believe that the culprit set up a complicated string system on the ceilings, and there's no physical evidence of that on the ceilings. Overall, I liked the first mystery, which is 2/3 of the book. I half liked the second mystery, which is 1/3. Doing the math, that means I give Miles Edgeworth Ace Attorney Investigations Volume 4 an 8 out of 10.